Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, October 16th, 2025. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live, steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, David Sirota will be with us to talk about his new book, Master Plan: The Hidden Plot to Legalize Corruption in America. Also on the program, Trump is installing loyalists into the IRS criminal division, making it easier to target liberal groups. This is expressly illegal, by the way, part of what Nixon got in trouble for. Trump also confirmed that the U.S. is conducting covert actions in Venezuela, making them not so covert. The U.S. also bombed another boat, the 5th time they've done this, off the Venezuelan coast, trying to goad Maduro into a conflict as a pretext to regime change, and Trump declines to rule out bombing the country. Today, or I guess it was yesterday, maybe into today, but the Supreme Court is hearing a case out of Louisiana. I highlighted this maybe 2 weeks ago. A hugely important case that could destroy the Voting Rights Act and cost Democrats over a dozen seats in the South. The White House is doubling its bailout to Argentina and Trump's billionaire friends' investments, $40 billion now. Meanwhile, 75% of Americans say monthly household costs have increased from last year, per a Harris Guardian poll. Israel continues breaching the ceasefire. At least 3 Palestinians were killed by Israel over the past 24 hours. Explosive robots remain in Gaza. The family of one of the Israeli hostages, whose body was just returned to them, confirms that he was killed by the IDF bombing. Trump proposes a bailout for struggling farmers that the struggle that he caused with the tariffs. It's in the middle of harvest season right now, but that would require the government to reopen. Pennsylvania Democrats have begun to organize a primary challenge to John Fetterman in 2028. Capitol Police are launching an investigation after an American flag with a swastika on it was found displayed in Ohio Republican Representative Dave Taylor's office.
He's just a kid.
This is the week of all of the Republicans revealing themselves to be Nazis, which is kind of every week. And lastly, the New York City mayoral debate is tonight, folks. Get your popcorn. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's an Majority Report Thursday. Hello, Matt. Hello, Brian. Excited to talk to our friend David Sirota about his book in a little bit. But as always, we have a lot of news to get to, even though the first IMer of the day is trying to troll me. Emma, what do you think has a better chance of happening, Cuomo beating Mamdani or the Rangers scoring a goal at the Garden this year? You are the second to troll me. Brian, as a Boston fan with his Red Sox hat on, had already beat you to the punch, okay? Yeah, the Rangers are in a rebuilding period, and they traded away a lot of skill. This is what's going to happen. I'm not happy with the team. But that's the most important thing we had to get to. So,
Top of the show.
Top of the show. Haley says, is this year's Nobel Peace Prize winner still praising Trump's bombing of her fellow citizens. That is going to be where we start the show today. Because on Truth Social yesterday, Trump basically boasted again, posting that he had extrajudicially murdered more people off of the coast of Venezuela. This is the 5th boat that he has bombed. The death toll is now 27 in total. Also, there were U.S. Air Force B-52 bombers were tracked in international airspace yesterday off the coast of Venezuela. I mean, major escalation. Major escalation. An attempt to get Maduro to respond because he's not doing so far. That's why they keep ramping up their actions.
I mean, this is already a war. They're blowing boats out of the water.
It's criminal. And the New York Times reported yesterday that the Trump administration had secretly authorized the CIA to conduct covert actions in Venezuela. And that felt like a deliberate leak when I read it, to the Times. Okay, it's not covert if they're leaking it. But it didn't even need to be a leak because Trump just admits, we're doing something secret in front of a microphone at the White House yesterday.
Why did you authorize the CIA to go into Venezuela? And is there more information you can share about these strikes on the alleged...
Well, I can't do that, but I authorized for 2 reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the... they came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy. And as soon as I heard that, I said a lot of these countries, they're not the only country, but they're the worst abuser.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer? But I think Venezuela is feeling heat, but I think a lot of other countries are feeling heat too. We're not going to let this country, our country, be ruined because other people want to drop, as you say, their worst. They have given us their worst.
As you say, right. No, that's as you say, buddy. Venezuelan immigrants in this country are coming here because of United States policy. Policy that Trump and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who's a major player in this, have championed for decades.
Regime change. They tried it under Trump's first term.
And now they're escalating those tactics. He's using drug trafficking here, obviously, without any finesse.
Fentanyl does not come from Venezuela. That's
right.
A lie.
No, it's a lie. And he's using it as a pretext to regime change. And he's not doing it in a very artful way. And we should be clear, too. Marco Rubio, this is as foundational to his career as anything, the Secretary of State. Since he joined the Senate, I think like around 14 years ago, he has been arguably the leading champion of sanctions against Venezuela, which immiserates the population. It is a tactic to hurt the people of Venezuela economically, to put pressure on them to overthrow their government. And it has been an abject failure. It's been a failure in the context of Iran, too, and other places that the sanctions regime has targeted.
It massively contributed to the problem that they're all lighting everyone's hair on fire with regards to, say, people fleeing certain countries. Like, they're fleeing Venezuela. You destroy a country's major export economy, and there's some disruption to the society that spills over into other ones. And guess what? The Pentagon and the ICE folks at the top, they knew that, and they knew it would justify more action on their part. It's a self-licking ice cream cone, as Sam says. Yeah,
that's right. And that's why there were hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan immigrants who came into this country on temporary protected status because they had to flee because of the policies that we have implemented in our hemisphere, or in our backyard, rather. In 2019, people may forget this, that Rubio tweeted out a side-by-side photo of bloody Muammar Gaddafi, either before or after he was brutally, killed. You can look up how that happened. It was very, very violent. How the manner in which he was killed. And he tweeted out a photo of that with a side-by-side of Maduro, basically implying we're going to kill you. And he was one of the leading figures to recognize Guaido as the leader of Venezuela and trying to whip up support across other countries in Latin America to recognize that, even though he was just not. Maduro's anti-democratic tactics are a problem, but for the most part, there has been scant evidence to show the amount of what the United States is alleging in terms of how he's so repressive of the popular will. He's continuously gotten elected, and they've been trying this for decades.
Yeah, I mean, and what's the solution to somebody who is rigging elections? It's not overthrow, and installing some puppet figurehead. Like, we run the world like it's 1950 still. Like, we have to engage the wider community of states, of governments, and they might have some input on how to deal with that too. Like, not every Latin American or Central American government loves Maduro, but let's just start using the Pentagon to shoot boats out of the water around it because we want to invade it and have another colossal calamity.
Because of the oil, by the way. And they are upset that Venezuela has state control of their resources in that way, and there is a desire to exploit that by American capitalists. And to Matt's point, like, none of this was effective. Like, the opposition to Maduro is probably a lot more fractured than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And that's in part because the United States' hand in this is so heavy and so obvious, and they're making it so abundantly clear that they are behind people like this. This is Maria Corina Machado. You might know her as the recent Nobel Peace Prize winner on Don Jr.'s show.
Joke.
In February. This is the new Guaido, the new figure that, and by the way, not new. I mean, Rubio had hosted her in the United States previously, and they've had a relationship. She's been a figure for really like 20 years, connected to the U.S. government, connected to NGOs. I'll read a part of this Nation article that lays it out in just a second. But here she is in February, just to give you a sense of the kind of person that they're trying to install.
I'm triggered with Trump Jr.
Forget about Saudi Arabia. Forget about the Saudis. I mean, we have more oil. I mean, infinite potential. And we're going to open markets. We're going to kick off the government from the oil sector. We are going to privatize all our industry. Venezuela has huge resources: oil, gas, minerals, land, technology. And as you said before, we have a strategic location, hours from the United States. So we're going to do this right. We know what we have to do. And American companies are in, super strategic position to invest. This country, Venezuela, is going to be the brightest opportunity for investment of American companies, of good people that are going to make a lot of money.
You're playing the game called capitalism.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love how explicit that was. Yeah. That's the one thing about the Trump era is he's going up and praising Miriam Adelson for the money she's and showing it's a transaction. I gave her Golan Heights. And you have people like this, like back in the day, if you're talking about the 1950s, Matt, there was a little bit more plausible deniability, but now you just got to go on the Nepo Baby podcast.
Like, we're gonna be so rich.
Yeah.
No FOIA is required.
Exactly.
I mean, this is exactly the Iran, the country that Trump bombed earlier this year that we have to apparently be so preoccupied with because of our ally, the genocidal Israel, has a big problem with them. Why? How did they become the way that they are?
Yeah.
This exact same shit.
By the way, speaking of Israel, this is a part of this piece in the Nation that if you want more familiarity with this figure, Machado, it's by Gabriel Hetland in the Nation. Machado is openly aligned with far-right figures in Latin America and beyond, including Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro, Argentina's Javier Milei, and Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu. Machado even penned a letter to Netanyahu in 2018 asking for Israel's help in forcefully overthrowing Maduro.
Fascist.
I wonder why he thought that would be a good guy to go to.
I mean, Israel, if I wanted to do some really shady espionage, I think Israel would be my #1 call.
It's easy mode. It's like if you're a politician, you run for office. Well, do you want to play this on hard or do you want to play this on easy? If you want to play it on easy, make a call to APAC and you got just an extra. It's like in a video game when you get like those add-ons.
Yeah.
$100,000 in the bank at the start.
Yeah. Machado's political career began in 2002 when she co-founded Sumate, an NGO, with the explicit mission statement of recalling former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez from power. Research shows that the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID provided immense financial support for Sumate. Any pretense that Machado supported peaceful change alone was rendered moot by her support of the 2002 coup against Chavez, with Machado signing the notorious Carmona Decree, dissolving Venezuela's Congress, Constitution, and Supreme Court for democracy. So that just gives you a sense. Over the next 2 decades, she's been a supporter of regime change in a bunch of different contexts as well. And so...
Yeah, Iraq, is that a democracy now?
Right.
Like, there's figures like Machado. I mean, I can't remember his name. Was codenamed Curveball, I remember. I forget what the guy's name is. Do you remember that? But, like, just feeding intelligence and then, like, I'm going to be in charge of this country because America's guns are going to put me there. And how does that work out?
Right.
El Janabi.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for the Trump administration, there is a rich understanding in Venezuela and in different countries. Like, you see how popular Claudia Sheinbaum is in Mexico, and like she regularly rails against neoliberalism and like interference in that way. And that's not even, the country like Guatemala or other nations that have very much their politics centered around, like, with that history in mind of the United States' interference and capitalist interference. And just to remind people that these are human beings, this is a local report from CNC3 News Network in Trinidad and Tobago. And the Trump administration keeps calling these boats that they're extrajudicially bombing, narco terrorists. Not according to this local news report. We'll just play the first minute of this.
2 men believed to be Trinbagonians were killed in the latest U.S. drone strike of Venezuelan waters. And now a Las Cuevas family is demanding answers.
They say Chad Joseph wasn't a trafficker, just a young man trying to come home. Jensen Levent went to the fishing village to speak with the family.
Like most of the men gathered here at the Las Cuevas fishing depot, Chad Joseph was a fisherman. Both his relatives and residents are denying strenuously that he was involved in drug trafficking. They say his killing was unjust.
When Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar said the United States should kill alleged drug dealers violently, no citizen was listed among the dead. On the U.S.'s 5th airstrike, Trinidadians Chad Joseph and another man identified only as Samaru were among 6 people killed on Tuesday, taking the number of alleged narco traffickers killed by the U.S. since September 2nd to 27. Joseph's grandfather, Cornell Clement, who denied his grandson was a drug trafficker.
Yes, so they interview the family. It's more of just, this guy was a fisherman. This was the same story with the first boat, the second boat, the third boat, the fourth. I mean, they're just knowingly murdering people. And they know this. They know this. I mean, these kinds of actions, right? Like, the Bay of Pigs, they were trying to be secretive about it. Iran-Contra, they're trying to be secretive about it. They're so crude and stupid, but they're also so bloody and willing to go anywhere. And that is what's horrifying about this situation. Let's turn quickly now to...
actually, sorry. Okay. I found a thing I was looking for here. This is a Rand Paul. I don't normally like to play Rand Paul stuff. But on this issue, I'll take it. Here's him laying out the sort of math here, and based on how likely it is, and I would say 100%, but this is from a libertarian's perspective. I think it's worth putting on here. This is on Newsmax.
I think blowing up speedboats in the Caribbean, though, isn't necessarily the answer. About 25% of the time that the Coast Guard boards a vessel in the Caribbean looking for drugs, about 25% of the time, the boat that's boarded doesn't have drugs. So we've blown up 4 boats. Statistically speaking, what are the odds that one of the boats didn't have drugs? We haven't heard the names of who these drug dealers are. How do you know for certain who they are before you kill them? So I'm not in favor of the current policy. I'm in favor of the continued policy.
There you go.
Interdiction of drugs, which is that we do search ships. But
exactly.
Yes.
Search the boats.
Process.
I mean, and this is the entire sort of fascist playbook right now. Like, why aren't we doing due process for undocumented folks? Because J.D. Vance got an argument with like people like Zaid Jilani on Twitter saying there's no time for that. We just got to start caging people. There's no time for searching boats. We just got to start blowing them up. And you know what? Who cares? Because the missile makers, they get a lot of money for it. The cage makers, they get a lot of money for it. Everyone's making money. Is it making anybody less safe? Is it actually making people
more safe? Yeah.
Or even like, safe from fentanyl? Of course not. It's just a lie for fascists to make money for war and cage industries.
Absolutely. For a little bit more fun in this first hour, let's turn to Zohran Mamdani's appearance on Fox News yesterday. This was just such a phenomenal performance by him. I know we keep singing his praises, but this is important beyond, in my view, the context of the city that we all live in here, because he's been providing a blueprint for many Democrats in terms of their answers on a variety of different issues, not just about the blanket affordability, which is what Hakeem Jeffries wants to, kind of narrowly focus on, but not even like affordability about what Democrats will do. It's more just like, we have to address affordability this time. Zohran is very specific. He treats the voters like they're adults, and he explains everything to them and how he's going to do it. And what he's going to do for New Yorkers comes up in this interview, in the second part. But this is how it opened. Didn't realize this because it was clipped separately, but Brian watched it live like a sicko. You're really getting on board on my level here. And you mentioned that this was how they opened it in the segment, then they went to break and came back.
Start with the most important thing.
Yeah, you wanna guess where Fox News went with this? Brown guy. You must be an anti-Semite. This is just a part of the 5-minute piece of this like around 20-minute interview where they press somebody running for a mayoral race that does not involve foreign policy about his views on, you guessed it, Hamas.
That's where you give credit?
So you've denounced Israel and the United States for the response to the slaughter on October the 7th. In fact, at times you've called it a lasting stain, the response, and at times you have left October 7th out of your statements completely around this issue. Right now, you just talked about Israelis killing some Palestinians, but Hamas is killing Palestinians within Gaza.
Can you pause this? All right.
Yeah, this needs a little bit of contextualization.
Hamas is, yes, killing Palestinians within Gaza. It is horrible that this like hellscape is created, this amount of chaos. The Palestinians that they're currently executing, according to reports, are the people who collaborated with Israel, the gangs that Israel funded
ISIS-style gangs,
to attack Palestinians who were trying to access aid. Now, any response to what about October 7th should be, and there's a viral video of a guy at a protest doing this. What about October 8th? What about October 9th, October 10th? And by the way, you could say that doubly, right? Because we're 2 years into this genocide. That's the response. But that's the context.
We also have to say the most important thing you can see from those, again, horrible images of people who horrifically collaborated with an apartheid regime, allegedly. No due process, again, because this entire region is just basically an anthill bombed by Israel anytime it wants to. But Hamas is still in power. So this entire 2 years that we've seen a fucking genocide with our bombs, because the whole reason was because it needs to get rid of Hamas. It was never actually about that, and everybody knew it wasn't about that. Anthony Blinken, General David Petraeus knew that actually Hamas was going to be there whenever this ended, because you can't bomb groups like this out of existence.
It's the only governing structure.
Guess what? They're still there.
Yep.
And so now what?
It's like the Taliban.
And Trump is admitting it too. Trump is saying it's actually a good thing. We're giving them temporary policing power over the area because they're the only group with the capability to do it. Because despite like all of the fear mongering about this, they are a governing structure there in an open air concentration camp.
The way to end these cycles of violence is very clearly demonstrated in history. Ireland is one example. The imperialists have to negotiate with who they call terrorists.
Yep.
That has to happen. And it could have happened after October 7th, what Anthony Blinken said on October 8th. There needs to be a ceasefire and hostage exchange. There was plenty of hostages in Israel, Palestinians held in cages in Israel on October 6th that could have been very easily used, and that would have sort of helped us along to this two-state solution that so many people act like they want to see. But that would have legitimized Hamas as a diplomatic body. That would have given Gaza and Palestinians more sort of, that starts the process that Israel doesn't want to see. They don't want to see what happened with Ireland. They don't want to see any of that. They want to conquer every piece of land that is there.
From the river to the sea.
Yeah. They're explicit about this all the time.
Yep.
Forgot we had a clip to play.
And they have not returned the bodies that they promised to return, including 2 Americans.
Yeah, they're under rubble because Israel bombed everything.
Itai Chen and Omar Nutra, whose families we have interviewed over these months. So what is your response to what Hamas is doing now?
I think those are bodies and remains that should absolutely be returned. And I think that I have no issue with critiquing Hamas or the Israeli government, because my critiques all come from a place of universal human rights. And my focus, however, is right here in New York City and transforming the most expensive city in America into one that's affordable for each and every New Yorker.
But, okay, I want to get to that, absolutely. But do you believe that Hamas should lay down their weapons and leave the leadership in Gaza?
I believe that any future here in New York City is one that we have to make sure that's affordable for all. And as it pertains to Israel and Palestine, that we have to ensure that there's peace. And that is the future that we have to fight for.
But you won't say that Hamas should lay down their arms and give up leadership in Gaza.
I don't really have opinions about the future of Hamas and Israel beyond the question of justice and safety and the fact that anything has to abide by international law. And that applies to Hamas, that applies to the Israeli military, applies to anyone you could ask me about.
Okay.
All right, move on. That was great. And he's provided the blueprint there. And in terms of talking about what eventually has to happen is the end of the apartheid and a one-state reality from the river to the sea, with Palestinians and Israelis in the same protectorate, territory, whatever. That is the only solution here. Like in South Africa, it has to be racial and ethnic integration. And he had previously been asked this question in the primary cycle about, do you believe that Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state? And he says, I believe that Israel has a right to exist as a
state with equal rights.
As a state with equal rights, exactly. And that's exactly how every Democrat going forward, if they are not an AIPAC shill, should be responding to this.
All 4 of them.
Yeah, because if you say, I mean, and even John Kerry had this contradiction out when he was Secretary of State. You can either be a Jewish state or a democratic state. You cannot be both. And liberal Zionists have a decision to make. And the decision is a pretty, I think, severe one. Are you for democracy or are you for ethno-states? And for whatever reasoning you have behind supporting ethno-states. And the answer that we have to have is, if you are for ethno-states, you join the ethno-state party and go vote for Republicans.
Absolutely. Because it's of actually quite urgent importance to have that Democrats change course immediately and absorb and embrace this answer, because there is a continuing active genocide that we're still finding out how many hundreds of thousands are dead in Gaza right now, in Gaza, where they're trying to reduce the population size through genocide of Palestinians to foreclose that opportunity, to make sure they're a demographic majority, even in the outcome that we're talking about. And then they're trying to ethnically cleanse the West Bank. So this is this is a matter of urgency. But now to New York City, because that's where he's actually running, even though Martha McCallum was a little bit slow to that, it seems. Here is, what part should we do here? We can't, I of course, like myself, I'm constantly over-pulling things that I find awesome. But let's do the part where he redirects the how will you pay for it question. Part 1 here, because he actually kind of wins her over by the end of this question. And this is another way that Democrats should think about responding to this stuff of how will you pay for it. There are plenty of resources. There's an abundance of resources and funds, if you will.
They would love to have free health care and free buses and all these things, but the question is, how do you pay for it? The city's already in debt. The governor says no to new taxes. Like Margaret Thatcher said, you know, socialism's great until you run out of everyone else's money, other people's money.
Well, what Andrew Cuomo said is that if he had $959 million, he'd give it to Elon Musk in tax credits, because that's exactly what he did. And I bring that up to you to say that it's often a question of whether you have the willingness to spend that money to benefit working class people, not where that money is in the first place.
So what would you cut? What would you draw from to do it?
I don't think we have to cut. I've spoken about raising taxes on the wealthiest. And frankly, this is an issue that we have here in New York City, and frankly, even across this country. When I've spoken to Trump voters right here in New York City, Hillside Avenue in Queens, Fordham Road in the Bronx, they've told me it was cost of living that drove them to vote for Donald Trump. They've told me it was a promise of a lower actual, whether it be cheaper groceries, whether it be childcare, whether it be rent.
Right.
And what we're seeing time and time again is we're more focused on the question of billionaires and the most profitable corporations than we are on people who can't even afford to make ends meet in this city.
Well, we know affordability is an issue, and I think that all politicians are getting to an understanding of that, and I think that you've done a lot, actually, to bring people's attention to that.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry, can we just play the... I interjected because I had forgotten he did the I appreciate it. Just go back 5 seconds, because did
he hypnotize her?
By the end of this interview, it was like she started asking him about soccer. He's just... The charm is... And just like the common sense of what he's advocating for is undeniable. Just watch this part.
Well, we know affordability is an issue, and I think that all politicians are getting to an understanding of that, and I think that you've done a lot, actually, to bring people's attention to that issue. Let's take a look at the free buses.
Okay. So,
because I know
that part was great, and then this part where he addresses Trump directly is the thing that's really making the rounds. Another incredibly smart move first of all, to look like the fighter against Trump. This is part 2. To look like the fighter here against Donald Trump, you understanding that a Fox News interview with Zohran is going to excite Democratic partisans.
Yeah.
And tying Andrew Cuomo to Trump and looking like the fighter people want for Donald Trump in this moment is so potent in his pivot to a general election audience, and is artfully done.
This is when I knew he was going to win the primary, was when he went to Cuomo on that debate stage and says, unlike you, Andrew, I didn't sue women for their gynecological records.
Yeah.
That is the type of go for the jugular sort of politicking that progressives need. And, frankly, I think Bernie can't really model because he's such a team player.
Right.
But we need people who are willing to do that.
Well, Tim Walz is the #1 example, and that was the campaign. I mean, the Harris and Walz campaign, but when he was calling J.D. Vance weird and then immediately abandoned that because he wanted to look more conciliatory in the VP debate, that was one of the many, bullet wounds in that campaign that caused the slow bleed out. But here, he never let your foot off the gas with these fascists. Never. Here's Zohran acting like a leader.
Looking to take these buses.
I know that you're turning 34 on Saturday, and I want to talk about your qualifications. Some say you have never run a business in your life, so I'm curious. And President Trump said that you never worked a day in your life. You worked as an assemblyman, and you've had other positions in the government. But
can you pause just for 1 sec? I'm sorry. I just got to say, it's actually, I want all of my public servants to not have any corrupting influence by the private sector. But
yeah, or also that is a fucking job.
Yeah, it's actually a tough job where you don't get paid that much.
Also, he was a rapper.
Yeah, and
it comes from show business. He's stablemates with Trump.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm not even joking that his rap, like that's he's so he has the gift of gab, and he's really quick on his feet.
And the production of that is impressive.
Right. But anyway, like
not that I listen to it.
But you see how like a pro-capitalist kind of bent. They want you to be in the
to run a
business
business
community.
Why didn't your dad?
Yeah.
Why weren't you born into real estate like our president?
From your life experience to run the largest city in the country?
You know, I want to take this moment because you spoke about President Trump, and he may be watching right now, and I just want to speak directly to the president, which is that I will not be a mayor like Mayor Adams who will call you to figure out how to stay out of jail. I won't be a disgraced governor like Andrew Cuomo who will call you to ask how to win this election. I can do those things on my own. I will, however, be a mayor who is ready to speak at any time to lower the cost of living. That's the way that I'm going to lead this city. That's the partnership I want to build, not only with Washington, D.C., but anyone across this country. I think it's important because too often the focus on the needs of working class Americans, working class New Yorkers are put to the side as we talk more and more about the very kinds of corrupt politicians like Andrew Cuomo that delivered us into this kind of crisis.
So the question I asked you was what specifically in your background?
All right, that's good. Very well done. Very well done. So excited for the debate tonight. But other Democrats, take notes. This is what works. And it's not just crazy, commie New York City. He was able to basically charm Martha McCallum by the end of this. Don't be afraid of making a case.
Affordability resonates with her because she's going to get fired for smiling.
I know. I mean, and what was funny in watching it in full is, like, you see her being charmed by the end of questions, but then she comes back with another, like, out of nowhere right-wing framing question. It's just in her ear, like, do not give him an inch, blah, 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 blah. So that was my read on it. Great job, Zohran. In a moment, we're going to be talking to David Sirota, but first, a word from one of our sponsors. Sometimes searching for the right doctor is like a complex Mad Libs game. You remember Mad Libs? I had a great time with that.
There was like a 2-month period where I thought it was the funniest thing in the entire
world.
my
gosh. If anyone's ever been to camp, Mad Libs and camp go together like PB&J. But that's a bit of an aside. You need a blank specialist who takes your blank insurance, who is in with blank miles of you, who doesn't have a blank month wait to get in for an appointment, and actually makes you feel blank. Well, ZocDoc makes it easy to fill in those blanks to help you find the right doctor for your specific needs. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and instantly click to book an appointment. You can book in-network appointments with doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, etc. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, and are a good fit for the medical needs that you have. Once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book. Appointments made through ZocDoc also happen fast, typically within 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. ZocDoc is how I found my dentist, who I really, really like. It's hard to find a dentist that you like. Also, just if you need something in urgent care, you're feeling sick, ZocDoc, as they mention, you can just go on the website and even get a same-day appointment. And calling the doctor's office and the back and forth with that is the bane of my existence. And ZocDoc takes that out of the equation. And you finally have like an interface where you can see a calendar and see the availability of these doctors. It is a game changer. I would like to thank ZocDoc for sponsoring today's episode. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/majority to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/majority, ZocDoc.com/majority. Link down below in the video and episode descriptions and at majority.fm. Go to ZocDoc.com/majority and download the ZocDoc app to sign up for free and book a top-rated doctor. All right, quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by David Sirota. We are back, and we are joined now by David Sirota, a friend of the show, founder of The Lever, a former speechwriter for Bernie Sanders, and co-author of the new book, which he co-wrote with Jared Jakang Mayer, Master Plan, The Hidden Plot to Legalize Corruption in America. David, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So I love your book. I love the subject matter. The fact that you start at the 1970s, really, in terms of tracing political corruption in this country, it's like the perfect place to start because of those court cases really laying the foundation for Citizens United, and just like chronologically, that's where corruption really in this modern form began to take hold. Let's start at the beginning, the 1970s. What happened there that got the ball rolling on the legalized corruption racket that we have in this country?
So I think people might hear the subtitle of the book, the hidden plot, and say, well, I already know about all the corruption that's happened. I know how it happened. And let me just say, and ask people to trust me that you don't know how this plot unfolded, because it was all secret. But the beauty is in the 1970s is they wrote it all down, right? Like it reminds me of the movie The Big Short, where he says, they're confessing, and he goes, no, they're not confessing, they're bragging.
Yeah.
Right. They wrote down exactly what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. And so for folks who wonder how they've woken up in this corruption dystopia that we're living in, it was a specific plot by specific people with a specific set of goals. And it does start in the early 1970s. I think people obviously remember Watergate. They remember it as a break-in. I think they don't remember it for what it was at its core, which was the first dark money scandal in modern American history, where bags of cash were being flown into Richard Nixon's campaign, some of it directly from major corporations seeking favors from Richard Nixon's administration. That money, a lot of that money ended up funding the break-in. And this was a moment when we were supposed to get this corruption under control, because it, blew out into the open, into the Watergate hearings, et cetera, et cetera. And
then Jimmy Carter gets elected, right, as kind of a backlash to that. Yeah.
Exactly. And Congress passes the Federal Election Campaign Act, which are the basic campaign contribution limits, disclosure laws. So this was supposed to be the triumph over corruption. But as we report in our book, this was also the moment where the master plan was really hatched. And it started with a memo that I think a lot of people have heard of called the Powell Memo. It was written by a tobacco industry lawyer named Lewis Powell, who was serving on the board of Philip Morris at a time, by the way, that Philip Morris was trying to prevent regulation and prevent people from knowing the link between cancer and smoking. And Powell, who's very upset in specific with Ralph Nader, because Ralph Nader is having a lot of success with campaign finance reform, cracking down on corporate abuse. And he writes this memo that is this call to arms for corporate America, saying essentially corporate America, billionaires, oligarchs need to invest heavily in American politics, in American media, to protect the free market system from this supposed assault of, I guess, the do-gooders who were trying to, root out corruption, who are making the government do things that the public wants, but isn't necessarily good for the people in power. Now, moving forward from that, a few months later, Lewis Powell gets a call from Richard Nixon to put him on the Supreme Court. So suddenly, Lewis Powell is in a position to execute his own Powell Memo. And we found this amazing, you have to see it to believe it, this amazing vinyl record of the Philip Morris send-off party for Lewis Powell to the Supreme Court, where they give him judicial robes emblazoned with tobacco industry logos. They are super excited that their guy is going to be on the Supreme Court. And here's the kicker. Within a few years, Lewis Powell engineers a radical Supreme Court ruling that for the first time says money in politics is not influence, it's not vote buying, it's not corruption. Money in politics is constitutionally protected speech. And soon after that, Powell works behind the scenes at the court to hijack a case, and we have all these documents with his handwritten scrawls in the margins, where he is hijacking another case to then extend those constitutional rights to spend in elections to corporations. The Bellotti ruling becomes the foundation of Citizens United, which is written by the immediate successor to Lewis Powell on the court, Anthony Kennedy. This is all part of one large plan. Now, you may wonder, you may ask, well, what's the goal of the plan, right? Like why they want to deregulate campaign finance? Why did they want to limit the enforceability of anti-corruption laws? And I think it comes down to, in a functioning one person, one vote democracy, the powers that be were having trouble getting what they wanted because the public was demanding action from government on basic things like environmental laws, better access to healthcare, and the like. And so what they understood was they would have to rig the political system to make money, essentially make $1 one vote, turn the democracy into something more responsive to money than to people.
And can you flesh out a little bit more of some of those Supreme Court decisions and like the different pieces of them? What comes to mind here is, Virginia pharmacy, Buckley. You mentioned Bellotti, but that trifecta of Supreme Court decisions is why we have Citizens United to this day. Absolutely.
So Buckley v. Vallejo was about those original post-Watergate campaign finance reforms. And those reforms aim to cap spending in elections, cap donations, et cetera, et cetera. And the Supreme Court, in ruling that overall total spending caps in elections were unconstitutional, based that on this radical theory. And by the way, a radical theory championed originally by none other than John Bolton, who was on the legal team. I mean, the master plan cinematic universe is a very small universe of recurring characters. So the Supreme Court, to get to the idea that you can't cap spending in elections, came to the idea that money in politics is constitutionally protected speech. And so therefore it is not, you can't limit it. And from there, Bellotti was about whether a banking company in Massachusetts would be allowed to spend in an election about a ballot measure to raise taxes on millionaires. The bank goes to the court and says, we want to be able to spend out of our corporate treasury money to influence how this ballot measure turns out. Lewis Powell, it's kind of crazy. Justice Brennan was going to write a very narrow ruling in support of the bank, but very narrowly. And then Brennan, in the process of considering the case, says, and we have the memos here, says basically, I'm actually getting on the opposing side. This is wrong. I've looked at this case. Now I think it's actually wrong, and the case is about to go down. And Powell then cobbles together, sort of saves the loss for his own side, cobbles together a narrow ruling. He ends up writing the ruling, essentially saying that corporations are essentially people who have access to those same constitutional rights to spend as much as they want. Citizens United, of course, builds on this and goes even further and says independent expenditures, even those by corporations, are not corruption and do not create the appearance of corruption because of this legal fiction that, for instance, super PACs are independent of candidates. I mean, they want you to believe, right, that if somebody's running for the Senate and there's a super PAC that's all it's doing is spending to elect that person to the Senate, some CEO from a company dumps $10 million into the super PAC, somehow that super PAC donation can't be corrupting of the Senate candidate. The Senate candidate's not going to owe that CEO anything. What? Because the super PAC is supposedly on paper independent. I mean, these are the limitations that have created the architecture of corruption.
Well, so, I mean, just I get dorky about this, but I just like laying it out like this. It's basically Buckley says money is an expression of speech. Then you have Bellotti, which basically kind of affirms the corporate right to speech. And then Citizens United in 2010 says, oh, independent expenditures, as long as they are, as you just lay out, independent, unlimited. And this is where you look at the charts about dark money in our elections.
Right.
why we are in this situation today is, I would argue, and I'm sure you would agree, David, the rollback of our rights in the war on terror and Iraq, and that's what Trump is capitalizing on here domestically. But in terms of the corruption piece, that is the story. It's the 2010 line going exponentially up with dark money where there's no traceability. So the dark money piece, can you explain that to people and why the Citizens United decision and the decisions subsequently too pave the way for this money to have zero transparency as well?
Right. So super PACs, independent groups, 501c4s and the like, they don't have to disclose all of their donations. You can have groups donating to other groups that are supposed to, political committees that are supposed to disclose, but all you see is the dark money groups, $200, $100 million donation. You don't get to actually see who is donating because there's no national federal disclosure law on the books, even though it's worth mentioning, even though the Citizens United decision itself says, look, disclosure is actually fine. The point is that we haven't put in place a disclosure system because the donors who control politics, obviously, they don't want a disclosure system.
It's like tips are appreciated. Tips are appreciated, but not required. Disclosure's appreciated, but not required.
Exactly. And there's this whole other concurrent line of cases that has to be mentioned, which is about actually out and out bribery, right? I mean, there's campaign contributions and the access and the influence that buys. Then there's literally cash in envelopes or gifts to politicians in exchange for various things. There was a line of cases that started with the Bob McDonnell case. Remember Bob McDonnell, the former Republican governor of Virginia? Cases about Ferraris and Rolexes and a donor giving him and his wife all these lavish gifts and then being granted special access to his officials in his gubernatorial administration. The Supreme Court rules, they overturn his conviction. They overturned his conviction, narrowing the definition of what an official act is to essentially make it harder and harder to prosecute outright bribery. And this case then becomes the Chris Christie Bridgegate convictions that get overturned, the Andrew Cuomo Associates cases that get overturned. So there's a lot of these anti-bribery law cases that are whittling down the enforceability of bribery. And you now have a case at the Supreme Court, an appeal at the Supreme Court. I mean, if you can believe this is so Orwellian, where remember the story of Donald Trump reportedly soliciting $1 billion from oil donors in exchange for promises of favors to the oil industry?
Yep.
This appeal at the court now cites that scenario as not as this is the kind of thing that needs to be prosecuted. It cites it as proof that pay-to-play culture is now so pervasive that the court should not allow it to be considered prosecutable because that would criminalize what we now consider to be normal politics. You're criminalizing politics. I mean, that's where we are right now. And I mean, and if that sounds crazy, I mean, we just had a Supreme Court ruling last year about the Indiana mayor, right? The Indiana mayor gives a contract to a local government contractor. The contractor soon after gives that mayor a $10,000 payment. The mayor gets prosecuted on bribery charges. The Supreme Court intervenes to overturn the conviction, saying that sequence of events means that the money wasn't a bribe, it was a permissible gratuity. I mean, this is where we are when it comes to corruption.
It's amazing because you just see how, we use the phrase facts on the ground, right? Israel would use it to create their facts on the ground. But this is almost a corruption version of that, where it's like, we've allowed this, so it must be legal. We can't reverse course now. This is how our politics has oriented itself.
Right. And J.D. Vance this Sunday on the Sunday shows, when he was asked about, this is how it works in practice.
Right.
J.D. Vance was asked about Tom Homan, the border czar, reportedly being given a paper bag full of $50,000 of cash, caught in an FBI sting in exchange for allegedly promises of delivering favors to what he perceived to be the donor if he became a government official. J.D. Vance's answer was extremely important. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something to the effect of, he didn't deny the facts. He said, there was no evidence of illegal behavior or illegal conduct. And if you take J.D. Vance literally, I read it to be, look, the Supreme Court just said it's not really clear what bribery even is anymore, right? So it's not even clear what's prosecutable. And it's worth adding, of course, the Supreme Court is handing down these decisions, narrowing the definition of bribery, making it harder to prosecute bribery at a time when some of the justices themselves are accepting lavish gifts from billionaires with business before the court. So they have an interest in making it harder and harder to prosecute bribery. And it's worth mentioning one other thing about Vance. Vance right now himself is spearheading a case that is at the Supreme Court that is designed to eliminate whatever was left of basic campaign finance laws after Citizens United. That sounds like an exaggeration, but his case is literally in court right now that aims to eliminate the restrictions on essentially parties passing donor money directly to candidates to get around existing campaign finance laws. Basically, if Vance gets what he wants, parties will could end up being passed through conduits where big donors can just funnel as much money as they want, huge contributions, much bigger than are allowed now, directly into the coffers of candidates who can then reward them with legislative favors on the other end.
My question would be, why bother? Like the Trump regime and the campaign openly collaborates with their super PAC. I can't remember the specifics of the stories off the top of my head, but they've been caught doing this repeatedly, and they're not the only ones. I mean, Democrats do this too.
Of course.
Why bother creating a situation where cash can go directly into bank account? I mean, maybe it's because they want to keep it for, I don't know, their own purposes or whatever, more control over it. It just feels like a hat on a hat. Yeah.
It's a great question. I read it to be that you're right. There's no pretense anymore. There's no pretending anymore. I think they want to have it all. Why? I put it the other way. Why not try to destroy what's you have the court, you have the presidency, you've got the apparatus of government. Why not try to get it all, even if it's only icing on the cake? And I think that's essentially their attitude. And here's the craziest part of all, the political side of this. Because Democrats have not made nearly as strong an anti-corruption argument as they probably need to make, the latest poll shows that the voters trust Republicans more on combating corruption than they do the Democrats. And if that doesn't scare you enough, let's remember that in 2016, Donald Trump, the last poll before that election showed Donald Trump losing to Democrats on every issue except for corruption. It's the same. The Republicans have a similarly sized lead right now on the issue of who do you trust to fight corruption. So this is a huge problem for the Democrats. And I would say it's crazy. Donald Trump is trusted by anyone on the issue of corruption, but I think it speaks to the fact that anti-corruption has not been a central plank and focus of Democrats in their messaging or in their party policy. And they are paying the price for it. And we're all paying the price for that.
That's what the AIPAC tag is a stand-in for, right? Where it's something that people can easily understand. This is a corrupting body. And, that's why there's this fight over that that issue in particular. And it's becoming toxic to the brand because it's a stand-in for what you're saying. It's filling a vacuum and a lack of democratic fortitude and messaging on this front. And just to flesh that out a little bit more, David, because it's so remarkable, Trump in 2016, I guess it would be obvious to me why that was the portrayal, because he was co-opting some of Bernie's messaging after that race. He's right. Hillary Clinton is bought. I've been in those rooms. I cut those checks. I know the system, and I don't need the system. So that argument, it was obvious in terms of like the facts of his history that that's not the case, but I could see why voters felt that way. Right now, he's openly doing pay-to-play stuff like Qatar plane, crypto businesses, infusing that into the government. It's insane that Democrats can't make that case now.
It's absolutely insane. And I do think you're right that Trump, like John McCain before him in 2000, I'm old enough to remember that John McCain was singed by the Keating 5 scandal, which was a huge scandal of its time, an influence peddling scandal. A donor comes to a bunch of senators, asks them to push off this regulator. John McCain was part of it. John McCain, singed by that corruption scandal, ends up citing that corruption scandal as reason why he's pushing campaign finance reform. He runs a 2000 campaign, almost unbelievably, at a certain point, gets close to winning the Republican nomination for president in 2000, talking about the systemic corruption. Not just the Democrats are corrupt, the whole system is corrupt, and I have experience seeing it, which gave him a lot of authenticity. And I think Trump did kind of the same thing in 2016. And I actually think even now that because Trump isn't trying to hide it, he's not playing a cutesy game like, oh, I'm like Mr. Clean here. The fact that there is no pretense almost makes him seem, dare I say, like honest. Like he's a pathological liar in his specific statements, but he's not trying to hide that he believes government is a fundamentally transactional enterprise, right? I mean, he's not trying to hide that at all. And in certain cases, he's bragging. And I think it's not that I think the public likes that. I just think the public says, look, he's not BSing me. Right? Like he is who he is. And the Democrats, they're sort of sometimes talking about specific Trump corruption scandals, but they're not willing to be self-critical of themselves, their party, the whole system in the way John McCain was. So the Democrats, if and when in rare occasions they talk about corruption, it doesn't come off as authentic. It comes off as hyper-partisan, purely anti-Trump. And I was watching, John Ossoff, the senator from Georgia. He was on Pod Save America recently. And he actually said something that I'm guessing ticked off a lot of their liberal listeners and viewers. Because Ossoff said, and I'm paraphrasing here, something to the effect of, look, the real problem in politics is billionaire and corporate money. And we can get rid of Trump, but that's still going to be the central problem. And I say that might have ticked off some of those liberal listeners and viewers, because the Democratic Party is selling the idea that all we got to do is get rid of Trump and everything will go, and we can all go back to brunch. Everything's going to be fine, right? Ossoff was actually saying, listen, Trump, is a symptom. The real problem is essentially oligarchy. And I think more of that, more of admitting to that is what is going to not only combat MAGA and Trump, but will reinvigorate a real opposition party here.
Ossoff is shrewd, and it is interesting, though, because he would know this better than anybody, given that he voted for that horrible Genius Act, the crypto bill, because he was worried about 2026 and crypto money in his race and getting Sherrod Browned, basically. And we can have a debate about whether or not that was good politics or not. But
can we talk about that for a second? Because I think there's something really important here.
Yeah.
So you're totally right. That is exactly how I looked at John Ossoff becoming one of the 16 or 18 Democratic senators suddenly voting with the crypto industry. And I think it's an important thing to understand about how corruption works day to day in American politics. We believe corruption works, money goes in, favors come out. And a lot of corruption happens that way. But there's an entirely other side of corruption that works without money actually being directly transacted. So crypto is the example. The crypto industry spends a lot of money in the 2024 election in a high-profile way to target what it calls its big critics, its targets. Katie Porter spends a lot of money in California to take her out in the Democratic primary. And the point of that spending, in my mind, is not just for the crypto industry to take out 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 of its critics. It's to send a message to everybody else in American politics, up and down the ballot, that if you get in our way, you may be the next Katie Porter or the next Sherrod Brown that we take out. And so what that does is that creates then a sort of no money is transacted in the next Congress, not yet, but you're still going to get lots of new voters, the crypto industry is, for its side, because all the senators are afraid of becoming being spent against. I had a senator tell me, put it this way. He said, listen, I can come up with a piece of legislation that takes on a powerful industry. And the problem is I'm not just risking me getting spent into the ground in my reelection campaign, but all that industry has to do is pull out its wallet and shake its wallet at all of my colleagues in the Senate to keep them off of my bill, keep them from co-sponsoring my bill, keep them from voting for my bill. So at a certain point, the money doesn't even have to move. It just has to be shown.
Right. It's the chilling effect that it creates. And that's why it needs to be systemic change on this front, legislation across the board. You have a bit more hope in the book towards the end, right, about somewhat of like steps forward on this front. My husband was joking with me watching that amazing interview with Cory Booker on I've Had It, and how he'll tout 75% or something, he says, of my donations are for $25 or less. It's like, okay, but what percentage of the money that you raise, right? Like there can be big checks that are cash, and then we're not even talking about the super PAC money. Right. And my husband was like, why did all of these corporate Democrats now adopt the Bernie small dollar donation thing in this like cynical way? And it's always a little bit like off, because they can't say I'm only raising money from this, but they'll gesture towards it. That's the lesson that they took. It's just interesting to me to see Democrats at least like co-opt some of the rhetoric. I don't take corporate PAC money is the other thing they'll say. But okay, there's something you're also concealing. But there has been improvement in this area, right? Even like the embrace of candidates like Graham Plattner and people wanting more of that. And you write about how Biden embraced the Disclose Act. Can you speak a little bit about that and how that was a bit of an improvement for Democrats and a good thing in Biden's presidency, even if it didn't get passed?
So to my mind, the way out of this, first of all, let's be clear, there are no instant solutions. So let's just disabuse ourselves of the idea that this is going to change immediately overnight. But I do think there are three avenues that are quite hopeful. I mean, I'm not naive, right? But these are to my mind, having studied this, these are the three avenues where I think we can actually make some progress. So the Disclose Act is the legislation that would require basic disclosure of dark money spending a federal law requiring that. Sheldon Whitehouse has been a big champion of it. You mentioned President Biden came out and actually gave a speech saying it needs to be passed. So putting the the actual White House behind it as the leader of the party, that is a good thing. A version of it passed at the ballot in Arizona, not exactly a super blue state, a swing state, passed by 70%. Okay, so this is a wildly popular, sort of nonpartisan idea that we should at least know who is spending in our elections. And again, this is playing within the legal confines of Citizens United. So this is not like pie in the sky stuff where we know automatically the Supreme Court's going to say no. The Citizens United decision actually has this whole write-up about how disclosure laws should be robust and are fine. So that's one avenue. The next avenue I think that's really actually exciting is that this whole idea that corporations are people and thus entitled to free speech rights to spend in an unlimited way to buy elections, that whole idea is predicated on state incorporation laws. So, right, so like the court says, okay, states under their incorporation laws, they treat corporations as the same as people, and therefore we have to operate from that. In Montana, luminaries from both parties are pushing a ballot measure. It says, well, if that's the case, then can't we go back to doing what we used to do, which is changing our incorporation laws? and saying that we grant corporations this, and this power, but we don't grant them this, and this power. We used to do that as a country all the time, that states granted corporate charters, and anybody who studies the law knows that corporations are artificial entities created by states. That is like technically what a corporation is. So human beings have rights. Corporations have powers. It's an important distinction. And so what they're proposing to do in this Montana ballot measure that should be on the ballot in 2026 is say corporations have all the same powers that they've had, except for one power. They can't spend in elections. Now, people may be hearing this and saying, well, okay, fine. Like some company's going to go, reincorporate in Delaware and then come back into Montana. But here's the thing. Every state's corporate code says that out-of-state corporations have to play by the same rules as the corporations in states, inside the state. So the point is that Montana can't solve the problem for Colorado, can't solve the problem for New York or California, but Montana, if it passes that measure, can solve the problem or begin solving part of the problem inside of Montana.
Yes. Yeah.
And so here's the thing, they're going to the ballot for that in Montana because their Republican governor and legislature would never pass it. But blue states right now could pass the same thing. And I want to be clear. I don't think it's a cure-all. Like billionaires would still be able to individually spend money. This is about corporation spending, corporate spending. But billionaires would be forced to spend their money through official political committees, which require disclosure, right? Because this would apply to nonprofits as well. So I think there's something really important and innovative going on. Yes, would there be a Supreme Court challenge to this? Yes. But the Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that state incorporation laws are what determine what powers corporations have. For the Supreme Court, and I'm not putting it past them, but for the Supreme Court to try to thread a needle and undermine something like this, they would have to really dismantle parts of corporate law that I'm not quite sure the Supreme Court wants to dismantle, right? So
right,
that's
and they've also made. I mean, the case law makes the distinction clearly that there is a difference between citizenship and so-called legal personhood. The legal personhood that is applied for corporation, applied with the motivated reasoning that you talk about, but it was applied, and they talk about it as a useful legal fiction, which creates oxygen or the ability for lawyers to make the case to the Supreme Court that if it's basically a vehicle for these cases to be heard or whatever, then the legal fiction that their rights can be abridged in a way. Like there is a roadmap.
I go back to the idea, the distinction between rights and powers.
Yeah.
We as human beings under the Constitution have rights. Corporations are granted powers. They are artificial entities. And to get into the weeds about it for one sec here, it makes sense. A corporation gets things that we as human beings do not. Corporations get limited liability. If they go bankrupt, if they break the law, the people who are running them in many cases are shielded from themselves personally going bankrupt, at least under the law, right? The point is that states extend that special privilege, and they used to, in exchange for, we're going to grant you some powers, but not other powers. And again, this used to be relatively routine, 100 years ago, and states never gave up that power. So to me, that is really exciting. Now, the final thing that I think is really exciting, and although I think it's not well understood, take a look at the New York City mayor's race. Okay, Zohran Mamdani, he wins the primary. He's
matching funds.
The front runner. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's the front runner. But what I worry about is that people, how did Zohran Mamdani do this? Like, well, he's a great candidate. He's got so much charisma. He's got such a powerful message, and his videos are so slick and well produced. All that's true. But I would say this: none of that matters, or very little of it matters, if he didn't have competitive resources to make sure enough voters saw those other positive factors. And that gets to New York City's public financing system. In New York City is one of, I think it's 26 cities and a couple of states, has a system of public financing where a candidate can run for office and have some of their small donations matched at a multiple level. You know, for every dollar he gets $7 or $8 in small dollar donations, right? And what that means in practice is a candidate can run for office raising small dollar money and ultimately get enough through the matching system, enough resources to run a competitive campaign, not to outspend their opponent, but at least to be competitive. And it gives candidates like Mamdani a way to run for office without having to rely on private donations that come with the expectation of legislative favors. Now, you mentioned Graham Plattner and some of the other Senate candidates who were kind of nationalizing their races, becoming kind of national celebrities to tap into national grassroots donors. I think in this election and under this current system, that's the best you can hope for. But that is not an answer to the current system, because for every one candidate who can become a national celebrity because they happen to be running for an office that people perceive to be a national super important office. I mean, I would challenge the idea that U.S. Senate races are more important than governor's races are more important, but that's the perception.
Can I just interject really quickly, David, just to say that, like, it's because why you're drawing this distinction, it's very important. In New York City, the matching funds only apply to in-city donations. You had to verify your address, right? Yes. So that system doesn't exist in Maine. So a guy like Plattner has to get a national audience, where Zohran didn't have to, because he just had to appeal to people within the city.
Exactly. So I'm not wrong. I'm obviously, like, I think the way Graham Plattner is doing it, and the way some of these other, Abdul in Michigan, et cetera, they're doing it the right way under the current system because they don't have a matching fund, a public financing system available to them. But what I'm saying is that people shouldn't look at the way Graham Plattner or Abdul El Sayed are raising money as the solution, as the long-term solution to this problem. Because, again, for every one of those candidates, there are 10, 20, 30, 50 candidates running down ballot that can never nationalize their race. They can never become celebrities, right? And so what happens is that down the ballot, oligarch money has actually more power because it's harder to raise lots of grassroots money, enough to become competitive. So a public financing system that says if to any candidate of any party, any ideology, if you qualify, you get access to a competitive amount of resources. That is the way to really break the stranglehold here. And again, I go back to Citizens United. Like, Citizens United and the Supreme Court have said that public financing systems of elections are fine. They do not create, in the Supreme Court's view, constitutional problems. So those three areas are real, active, and live ways to start breaking this hammerlock of money in our politics. And for people listening, what I would encourage them to do, because I know corruption feels like this impossible problem. If you're sitting there in a blue state or a blue city, ask your local city council person, hey, do we have a public financing system of elections? What can we do to get the ball rolling on that? Hey, my state legislator, we're in a blue state with a Democratic governor. Can we just pass what Montana is doing? You will be surprised. The more local you go, you will be surprised at how much more agency you may have with a relatively few number of people. If you're trying to call your senator, if you're trying to call your governor, and you're 1 or 10, 2 or 5 or 10 people, maybe you're going to get ignored. If you're calling your city council person, if you're calling your state legislator, like, you're going to get more attention. And our screens are sort of designed to tell us not to focus on that. Right? We all have our screens. We want to focus on national politics, and it's exciting. And we forget the potential agency and power that we have right here in our local communities, where this battle really is unfolding as well.
Lastly, David, just because I wanted, we have some viewer questions. Alex B writes in saying, ask David about SCOTUS teeing up a case to completely destroy the Voting Rights Act and watch red states draw themselves 19 more House seats. Covered this last week and headlined it today, but that's arguments were heard yesterday, might be extending into today. This is a little bit kind of a partner piece to your research for this
I know
book,
all about it. Yep.
But it's very important, obviously.
Yeah, and I think we have to see it all as one large master plan. I want to go back to what we were discussing about the Powell memo, right? Democracy is becoming a problem. This is the thesis of the Powell memo. It's getting the government to do things that we, the elite, corporate power, oligarchs, don't want. And this is the central problem. Democracy is the problem. A government responding to the people is the central problem, essentially, that's the message of the Powell memo. And there, to my mind, there are really three pillars of this, and it explains the three pillars. We have to deregulate the campaign finance system and weaken anti-bribery laws so we can basically buy elections. We can rig that part of the democracy. We have to allow for our side, when it gets power, to rig the maps, to rig the playing field, to rig the terms of the game, to make small d democratic expression harder and representation harder to happen. That's the gerrymandering piece that we're seeing right now. And then, of course, there's the other piece, which is we have to make it harder for small d democratic institutions to hold corporations accountable in their direct relationship with corporations. I'm talking about unions, right? We have to go after unions. We have to allow for gerrymandering and the rigging of the rules. And we have to deregulate the campaign finance system to allow for buying of elections. It's the iron triangle of the assault on democracy. I hear people say, Donald Trump is the crisis of democracy. I see Donald Trump as the culmination, the expression of the crisis of democracy. But if you're worried about the democracy crisis, let me introduce you to the master plan that's never before seen the light of day until our book is coming out with all these documents published. This master plan that has allowed for the buying of elections up and down the ballot for the last 20, 30, 40 years. We are in the culmination of the master plan that created the democracy crisis. This is not something new. It is not something sudden. It is the climax of it.
Very well done, bringing master plan back in. It's seamlessly working that in. It's great.
I mean, it was like 2
work.
years of work on this book. I mean, really, like I said, I really mean, I'm about to turn 50. I've been working in politics and media for 30 years. This is truly the most important journalism project I've worked on because it really has surfaced information that I think people sort of theorized it was there, but we didn't really know it was there. To see them write it down, it's not just important for history. I want to leave people with this idea that if we can understand that what's going on is part of a deliberate master plan, executed by specific people with a specific goal, what it means is it's not a natural human evolution. It's not a force of nature.
Right.
It means that it can be reversed. It can be rolled back. It was created by humans. It can be reversed. This is not some, divine force here. This is like we have to have our own organizing, our own plans to reinvigorate the democracy. I mean, imagine what they felt like. Back in it's 1971, Ralph Nader's winning all sorts of fights in Congress. They were a tiny minority that were throwing ideas against the wall. They probably seemed totally unrealistic, but they worked at it for decades and decades. I'm not taking inspiration from them, but it's only to say they could have been demoralized and checked out too, but right. they actually figured out a plan, they stuck to it, and they made it happen. And in some ways, that should be a reminder to all of us.
Absolutely. And if you're saying, this is you've done some great investigative work in the past, major name on it, so that's makes people should check out the book even more if that's what you're saying. Master Plan is what it's called, The Hidden Plot to Legalize Corruption in America. David Sirota, always check out The Lever as well. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
And thanks to you. And I want to add one last thing.
Yeah.
Part of what Powell writes about is the infiltration of media. And I will say that one of the things we've obviously seen that culminate, Barry Weiss, the Ellisons, the billionaire. One other thing that I am hopeful about is that the reinvigoration of real independent media is something that is extremely important right now. And you are one of the outlets that is part of that movement. And so for everybody listening here right now, I don't care whether you support The Lever, the Majority Report, any other independent media, just support independent media because it is all a part of unwinding this master plan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate your time today. And we will put a link to a master plan down wherever people are listening to or watching this and at majority.fm. Good to talk to you, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right. Of course. With that, we are going to wrap up the first part of the program, head into the fun half. I just saw we went a little bit over, but when we start talking about things like corporate personhood, that gets me going. And David is always just a great resource on that kind of thing. As David mentioned, the show relies on your support. Join themajorityreport.com if you can. Support us. You can IM the show. We'll often read your IMs on air. We get a lot. We have a lot today as well. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning, we had a show on Tuesday night. Alex Skopik talking about Javier Milei in Argentina and, what was at that time a $20 billion bailout extended to his libertarian from Uncle Sam, now is at $40 billion. And Hartzell Gray, who is running for Congress in the, let me make sure it changed, Missouri's 4th district, which stretches all the way from Kansas City to Columbia, a huge square of a district. So he's going to be running in some rural areas. This is gerrymandering stuff. So hopefully he can surprise people down there. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
Do it. And now we, I believe, have our friends Brandon and Binder. Whoa. Hey, guys.
That's right. Hey. I'm doing great.
Hey, glad to see you all. I'm happy to see you. Glad to see you. That's not a phrase. What's happening on the discourse, Brandon?
Oh, so if you hadn't noticed, we are in the march up to Halloween. So along with the news, we've been delving into anti-Halloween propaganda because, with all the conspiracy theories rolling around out there, anti-vaxxerism, Charlie Kirk, thick neck stuff, like it's sometimes nice to go back to the basics and see just some good old-fashioned satanic panic. Where are we with like poison candy? Where are we with like human sacrifices? So we've been doing that. And also, we've been like really, I think, documenting Candace Owens's descent into madness after the death of her best friend. So like that's also been, a little bit jarring. So come join.
I was like, did Brandon freeze?
Yeah, she's not doing well.
Yeah, no.
Maybe
I think she's doing really well, ratings wise. But sometimes that's not what's best for us emotionally. But so feel free to come over to join the discourse on YouTube. The discourse on Twitch and, and celebrate the spooky season.
All right, do it.
You're getting me in the mood for Halloween, Brandon. I want to go watch a scary movie right now. Jeez.
Well, just know that if you watch a scary movie, you're opening yourself up to demonic possession.
Right. I know that every time I watch one. Right. That's why I watch them, actually. I cross my fingers hoping for it.
I love that those comments are getting more prominent in chat sections and not less in 2025. That people are thinking like, oh, if I watch The Ring, I'm actually going to get followed by a demon.
It speaks to the lack of
a demon haunted world,
media literacy in a variety of different contexts.
I think if you ever want to challenge your understanding of the world. You should watch my stream and delve into the madness that is modern American culture. And I want to tell you, a lot of people cannot tell fact from fiction. It's scary to admit it, but a lot of people, they watch The Ring and they say to themselves, this is a thing that happened, and it could happen to me too.
You never know. Binder, what's happening on your shows and newsletter?
Just go to youtube.com/MattBinder, hit that subscribe button,
Yes.
and tune in to Leftist Mafia tonight at 8:30 p.m.
Do it. Yes. How's the little one? Father of 3.
She's doing good. Everyone's doing really good. They're all getting excited for Halloween on the way.
Yeah.
Speaking of demons, this past weekend they finally got around to watching K-pop Demon Hunters, and all they've been doing is singing the songs this whole week. So
Well-
look, even demons are even infiltrating the youth of America now. That's how.
It's probably just a communism vehicle. I mean, have we ever thought about that? That's why Trump's slapping all these tariffs on any movies or TV shows produced outside the United States.
Right, they even speak a bit of Korean in the movie when they sing the songs. I mean, oh no, this is that outside influence. This is a globalism at work, folks.
What Brandon said about if you want to test your sanity, you should check into my stream. Reminded me of this clip of
yes,
of
we'll end with this.
Brett Weinstein. Where a listener wanted him to listen to a podcast called The Telepathy Tapes that purported to prove the existence of like secret mind powers.
I thought Sam was gonna cry.
I think about this
watching
every day.
Yeah.
And Brett is like, I don't trust myself to not go insane with how forceful I'm going to find that argument.
I'm sure these telepathy tapes are fascinating. What I don't know what to do with is if these telepathy tapes suggest that everything I think is true about the universe is wrong, does that mean that everything that I think about the universe is wrong? Or does that mean somebody would like me to do that because, I've been a pain in the ass?
A puppet master.
So, where am I going to end up if these telepathy tapes really upend everything I think I know? And the answer is, then I'm in a position of having to uncomfortably question what they are.
His wife losing patience.
She's like, "Are you done with this anxiety?"
She literally responds with, "I think you'll be all right."
Yeah, I think you could watch it.
The power of the podcast. Oh, Brandon, we lost your audio. It's gone. The telepathy tapes.
You'll have to rejoin Brandon.
Well, we'll head into the fun half. That's our teaser. Get Brandon's take on Brett Weinstein having a psychotic break and being so mentally weak that he can't listen to a podcast without having his whole worldview destroyed.
That's the type of person I want hosting a show that I look to interpret the world for me.
See you in the fun half.